Hello everybody, Floppy Waffle 69 here, and today's video we will be looking at the Tier 8 Premium Heavy Cruiser for the Imperial Japanese Navy. This is the Atago. Now, the reason why the Atago is being covered today and not the actual time that I had it planned to do a analysis video on it is because of the last video I put up on my channel when me and Jacques went over about 5 premium ships that we would recommend everyone to buy. It could theoretically be their first and only premium they ever purchase in the game, or maybe like a good premium to start off. Obviously, some people are going to recommend you buy a lower tier premium, like maybe a 6, 7, 5, something like that, as they're not that expensive and it's just something to try out, test the waters, which I totally get. But also we had to factor in that this could be your only premium you ever purchase, and that's why we developed, that list of usually around tier A, as there was one tier 7 ship, just because they make the most bang for their buck. Obviously tier 9, in our opinions, were just a little bit too expensive that it really didn't justify flat out purchasing those ships. And a lot of tier 9 ships you could actually, a lot of the tier 9 premium ships or special ships you could buy usually just for coal in the armory made more sense to pick up rather than actually spending the heightened price tag for those vessels. But today we were looking at the Atago, and this ship's currency, how much it costs in US standard dollars here is $44. And what is the Atago? Basically, what is this ship? What are you getting for? What are you paying for? In my opinion, it is a little bit of a side grade to the Japanese heavy cruisers that are in game currently, and that's going down to the Zhao. The closest thing you could get to this thing that you could play in game, obviously, is the 203mm armament mounted Mogami, which is a fully upgraded Mogami. I've covered that ship in my channel already. I talked about her, and she is fun. But where the differences lie are in the torpedo firing angles with the ship. Obviously, the Atago is going to have more center-mounted torps, and when we get to the torpedoes, you'll see that. Whereas the Mogami has them more here in the ass, which again is better for kiting, but also, in my opinion, not as usable in more situations. Whereas the Atagos are going to be a little bit more universally utilized and easier to use than obviously the Mogamis and other torpedoes in this line. Those are familiar with like Furitaka torpedo firing angles that you have down at tier 5. Again, I covered that in my analysis review of the Furitaka. Going to be very comfortable for you guys. Going to be easy to use. Should be no problems there. And then another big change between this and the Mogami with the tech line would be that you get a heal at tier 8, which is always nice. I would think that there's nobody out there that's going to be bitching about gaining a heal, especially in a tier 8 cruiser. I know there are a couple lines that have that already, but obviously for the Japanese there is no line where cruisers for them have a heal starting at tier 8. So this is always a nice addition and a welcomed addition for people as well. So it's going to increase the survivability a little bit of the ship as well. And also you're going to have a little bit of longer reload too. We'll get to that in a bit. I think it's around 16 seconds, again, which is long. So one thing that I really recommend, why I didn't put this on my list, with that, a top 5 list of like first buy premium ships, is because in my opinion, this is a very methodical ship. There has to be a lot of knowledge already in game about things that you have learned, tips and tricks, tactics, whatever, to really get the most out of this ship. And I feel like if you're a newer player and you grind up to tier 8 and you're like, I'm going to buy a premium and I'm going to buy the Atago, you still haven't really learned too much yet at this point. Realistically, you could still be just under or just over 100 battles played to really get the most out of her. And I really feel like in the beginning, in the early stages, you're not going to have too much fun, and you're really going to fail to distinguish the difference between what you've already been playing to what you've just learned or what you've just purchased, to get the most right out of this particular vessel and whatnot. So that being said, though, I still highly recommend this ship. It is an honorable mention down on my list. I know a lot of people don't read like the little like video descriptions or whatnot, but all the way in the bottom, next, watch under the timestamps, I do have 2 honorable mentions that I failed to mention in my video, which again, I'm sorry, it was a first time top 5 video, so okay, obviously we're going to get better as the channel progresses. But I did recommend the Atago as being like an honorable mention number 1, and honorable 2 mention was the USS Kidd. And yeah, so we're going to keep going on. We're going to, like we do always do here in the port, we're going to, delve under the hood, dig around a little bit, go over some soft stats, some hard stats, so that you guys can kind of see what you're dealing with here, and decide whether or not you want to pull the trigger on the Atago in the future. Or if you get her in a Santa container, you can be either really, really excited or disappointed, depending on who you are as a player. And then also, I'll give some tips and tricks how to take her down on the high seas when you see her in battle, because you most likely will see this ship every now and then on the high seas, as it is I would say it's a fairly popular vessel. So let's get right into it. So without further ado, we're going to send our commander to the reserve, just so we don't have any stats that are fucked up from that regard. And we will go to our signal flags. They are already demounted. Demount all. And there's our upgrades. Obviously, you guys already saw the upgrades that I recommend in the beginning of the video, so I'm not really going to talk much about them. First things first, we are going to go over the armor layout. Now, I'm sure you guys, if you're interested in the Atago, or just, again, throughout history, without, just scrolling through YouTube, typing in wows, and looking up the Atago is an older premium ship. This was the replacement for the infamous Kitakami back in the day, when Wargaming decided to remove that. Obviously, they reintroduced that with a massive paywall, if you understand, you pick up what I'm saying, to get the Kitakami. But back in the day, you were gifted this ship for, I believe, free for like compensation. And I think most people were happy, although they were sad to see their Kitakami go away. But again, over time, with the way the game progressed, I think people were happy with the trade, so to speak. So, but we're gonna go over the armor, and a lot of people, the other videos, other CCs, content creators, whatever, that have covered this ship, obviously they have always talked about the armor and just how good the armor is on the Atago. And again, I am gonna second that. Yes, you only have a 25mm nose. Yes, you only have a 25mm ass, but you do pick up this 41mm deck, very similar to that of what we saw maybe on the Furataka and the Alba. This is going to help a lot with plunging fire and nullifying overmatch from specific vessels. It's nice. It is very, very nice. This also is going to create, on a negative, a threshold for armor-piercing bombs, so you have to be careful and wary of that. As long as our AP bombs can pen, that have enough pen, so that will create a thicker threshold. So this thing does, at least in my opinion, I've noticed this thing does eat AP bombs, especially from like the Germans, relatively easy, and like the Enterprise, which it will be fighting. But like in regards of artillery fire, this thing is great, especially from nullifying HE splash damage, or pen damage, excuse me, and overmatch from long ranges. Superstructure is, I mean, it's sleek, but it is still prominent. It's definitely not hard to pinpoint and shoot it, especially if you have any reliably good accuracy or aiming. 16mm clocking in on that. Now, another thing to note are these torpedo bulges. You do get torpedo bulges, and I've covered this on the IJN heavy cruiser line. These will act like space armor for you guys, and adding a little bit of like black hole armor, depending on where shells, like what kind of caliber of shells that are fired at you and where they land. 27mm, not terrible at all, guys. And going on to that, you do have a 16% torpedo belt reduction, which is super nice and super comfortable. Stripping away that layer, you have a 102mm armor belt, with a 27 casemate armor just north of that, Citadel armor plating. Not incredibly hard to Citadel this thing. As you can see, we are dealing with an above water Citadel. We do have a little bit of that step Citadel as well. So Citadeling or taking sits from the ass or through the nose are certainly, I don't want to say common, but can happen. So you do have to be aware of that, where some ships that don't have step citadels don't really have to be as concerned with that. Their biggest concern really just has to come into play with when regards of like range and plunging fire when dealing with taking frontally overmatched citadels. So again, very, very, I think pretty damn well armored for a tier 8 cruiser. Also, one other thing you want to talk about is kind of the sleekness of the hull and how low it sits in the water. This will play in heavily with your play style, and just be overall a harder ship to hit, just because of its sleeker and low profile, which is very, very nice and very beautiful aesthetic too. I must say about the Atago. Very, very pretty ship. Hit points clocking in at 40,100, which I do want to double check. Yes, it does clock in. So it is sitting actually like 1,000 HP higher or so than that of the Mogami, which is sitting in at 39,100. As you know, I'm going to be comparing a lot of my stats to the Mogami 203, just because I've already covered that on my channel. And it's relatively similar in most regards. So if you guys are familiar with that ship, how to fight that ship or not, this ship is obviously going to be pretty similar, right? So moving into the artillery of 5x2 203mm guns. As for the secondary battery, you have 4x2 127mm guns. Keep in mind these aren't the dual purpose 100mm guns like you find on the Akazuki, Haragumo, Kitakaze. So they aren't going to get that improved pen at all from that. Just a little side note. But with the main battery, you are clocking in on a reload of 16 seconds. That is very, very long. One of the reasons why I don't recommend this ship, like I said, because it's methodical. You have to really pre-plan your artillery, your salvos, have really good aiming to get the most out of your ship each and every salvo. And it's something that I don't think newer players have perfected yet. I think usually new players want to fire their guns, artillery every time it's done reloading. That's just how new players are. If you're a little bit more seasoned or a little more experienced, you know kind of when to shoot, when not to shoot, when to go dark, when to stay lit, that sort of stuff. So when you do master that, then I'd say the Atago is a go. It is definitely a green light to purchase. 180-degree turn time is 29 seconds with that maximum dispersion at max range, I believe, clocking in at 124 meters. Max range is 15.8 kilometers, which is on the lower side. Again, like for example, that's the same range as like the USS Des Moines, and that's a DPM cruiser. So to fight, and if you get double up here against a Des Moines, for example, really to unleash on him, you're going to have to pre-position your ship and make sure you're kiting away to get a salvo or two off, because that guy is going to be getting 3, 4, 5 salvos off before you after you shoot one or whatnot to match you. You have to really use caution when engaging, especially with targets that have faster reloads than you. Yeah, it's something a little bit of a side note. High explosive, 3,300 HE damage with a 17% chance to start a fire. That is awesome. The fire chance on this thing is super, super nice. You are clocking in at a 6.4 fires per minute, whereas the Mogami is coming in at a 7.3. As the Mogami, I believe, does reload a slight bit faster, clocking in at a 14-second reload, whereas the Atago does have the 16-second reload. Shells are very similar. If you're familiar with how IJN ships, rather than the Zao, deal with their artillery, especially at ranges, you should feel right at home. To me, they are floaty, but not as floaty as like American cruisers, for example. That's kind of where I try to draw similarities to hopefully get that point across to you guys. The armor piercing, extremely potent. You will see examples of that in the battle here at 4,700 damage. Again, matching the shell velocity of that of the HE at 840 meters a second. Moving to the torpedoes, and these are the 4x4. So you have 2 launchers per side that are launching 4. Again, quad launchers do bite ass. I'm not a big fan of the quad launchers. You already know on my channel about the dispersion values. I just don't think they're very good dispersion values personally. They go 10 kilometers. They reload in about 101 seconds. Maximum damage is 17,233 with a speed of 62 knots with a detectability range of 1.6 kilometers. This is allowing the enemy to have about a 9.6 second reaction time, which theoretically is more than enough time, even without hydro, to see and dodge incoming torpedoes. The torps do hit hard if they land, but usually relatively competent players will anticipate and dodge your torps with ease, so to speak. So don't rely too much on your torpedoes. Though the way I had my Atago build, I actually do spec some, like, what is it, Pack-a-Punch skill, I think it's called, the tier 3, which is going to increase your torpedo damage substantially. Which again I recommend because I play this ship a little bit different. Though with the commander builds that I present, that is what I recommend if you're going to tailor a captain directly to the Atago, rather than just bouncing commanders as a training for your IJN heavy cruiser lines. So just a good caveat, thing to keep note. The thing does have the airstrike. It doesn't have depth charges. Thank God. I won't cover too much in that. Just know that it does have that. A defense is not the best. I really don't recommend taking defensive AA just because that defensive AA isn't going to increase your values enough to really deal adequate damage to incoming aircraft. I would say if you're dealing with tier 6 CVs, you'll be able to shoot down way more than tier 8, and God forbid you run into a tier 10. With your flak damage, I believe you only have 3, which is very, very poor for a cruiser, as flak is your main damage dealer when dealing with oncoming or incoming enemy aircraft. Going into the maneuverability of the vessel, which is always nice to talk about, we are dealing with a maximum speed of 35.5 knots. Pretty damn fast for a cruiser, I might say. A whole knot faster than that of the Mogami at 34.5, with a 790 turning circle radius, which is okay. It's definitely not bad. And a rudder shift time when I have it upgraded to 6.5, though it comes stock at 8.1. That's why I take the rudder mod, just so I can, use all my guns and turn back away to angle and use my armor effectively. Fire all my guns, turn back, that kind of stuff. You are a kiter in this thing. That's how the way you should be playing. I don't take the propulsion to start and go my engines. You can if that's more the comfortable for you. For me, I think you're getting it more out of the rudder shift mod, as the way you should be firing kind of more like open water. This is an open water cruiser. You're not going to be hugging islands unless you're trying to mitigate damage and fall dark. You're not going to be island humping. You're mostly going to be in open waters, kiting away, using your good HE to your advantage while launching your torpedoes. Hopefully that someone can sail into or whatnot. Yeah. Going into the concealment value, our final value here, just so I make sure I get this correct, the value is 11.5 kilometers base, but with the right upgrade, you get it to 10.4, and then with the commander skill, you actually get it to 9.3, which is awesome. Very, very stealthy. The ninjas of the seas here, so to speak, with these IJN heavy cruisers, and the Atago is no exception. This thing can definitely creep up and definitely schwack unsuspecting ships, especially broadside cruisers. You have to be careful because the Atago's 203s, just like we've covered in all of my IJN heavy cruiser down the line series. The AP is prominent and potent and can definitely punish if you're not angling properly and respect those guns. So final takes here on the Atago. Yeah, so it's one of those things where it's like I knew about the ship, and I do like her. I do like her a lot, but the only reason I didn't add her to the list previously with my last list of the top 5, first buy premiums, is just because the reasons I stated. Being a very methodical cruiser, having to have a really good foundation already before you know her. I feel like all the other ships I listed are either way easier to play, or you just have to know how to understand the class to get the most out of her, like the Cossack, for example. As long as you are familiar with DDs, I think that ship makes sense. The only one being kind of like the Roma is the only one that would be kind of a, hey, like you really have to understand how the individual ship plays to get the most out of it, but how else are you going to know that other than what I'm telling you, and then getting behind the wheel and, and the artillery and playing the ship for yourself and really see what I'm talking about, which, don't get me wrong, I will make a Roma video down the road. Just right now, I felt like I would address the honorable mentions first, so it kind of see and kind of show you kind of why they aren't or didn't quite make the list, but they did make the honorable mentions spot. So, anyways, without further ado, I think it is time to hop into battle and show you what the Atago is all about, man. So let's get into it. Alrighty, guys, and here we are in battle with the Atago. Good battle. I think this is going to highlight a lot of the pros and the cons to the ship and kind of show you the thought process of myself when playing this vessel. As I did state, I do think this ship is very methodical. You have to have patience. A lot of players don't have that in World of Warships, as we can all agree. We've all seen players just race in there, shoot their guns, even when they have, 5,000 less HP, they're still firing their guns so they could clearly fall off detection, just not having a core concept of the game. And I think if you have a core concept of the game, that's about half the requirement for the Atago. The other 25% and 25%, so 50% total, 25% would be knowledge about how cruisers play in general. And then the last 20% is knowing how IJN cruisers play in total, making up the entire 100% of what this ship really does take to play. I know it's a very popular opinion out there, and you're going to see it everywhere. If you go out there on Reddit or Google right now and go, the Atago, what do you guys think of the Atago? Everyone's going to say, oh, I think it's an excellent first buy premium. This is my first premium ship. This should be your first buy premium ship, all that kind of stuff. And I'm not going to sit here and disagree with that statement. I do believe it is a very, very truthful statement. Side note, look at this. This is what happens when you don't play the ship in a while. You're not familiar with the shell arcs. So yeah, but going back to what I was saying, I think it's more about knowing, like I agree that it should be a nice first time premium ship, or first buy premium ship, but at the same time I think there should be a little bit more requirements and things that people should be talking about, rather than just saying, hey, this should be it, this is the end all be all, because now the game has progressed further and further and further on here in the future, that there's just other premium ships out there that I would recommend. So and I think the ships that we had, I think we had a pretty darn good list, from a fun factor, from a competitive factor, just all the above. And realistically, the number one rule that I have when making that list was, ships that are fun. Now, I get a lot of you are gonna be like, well, how the fuck do you find the Roma fun? I'm telling you, when I release the video, you'll understand. It's one of those just trust me, bro moments about when I'm speaking about the Roma, because the Roma is a very misunderstood ship, because people just judge her based off her lack of consistency with artillery. But what people also don't tell you is that a lot of battleships, I say the vast majority of these battleships in this game, have lack of consistency, which makes the class. I think when we start blurring the lines of consistent battleships, we start getting to the realms of overpowered and power creep, in my opinion. Because one of the things that balances out battleships being able to just shit on everybody is the ability to have inconsistency. So, again, just my opinion. We'll get into that more and more. So I don't really want to go too much about opinion-based shit when it comes to like the game and how game mechanics work. That's not really why I made this channel. As you see, I don't just rant about ships either. I think that's kind of stupid. I think it's smart because I want to come at things from like an educational thing. I think most importantly, I want to come at things from like a discussion point. I want to have engagement. I want to have people saying their piece. Like, you're not going to get judged here. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to sit there and say, oh, you're a fucking idiot. It's stupid. Why would I want to do that? I think everyone's going to have their opinion. And if I can help players maybe help formulate that opinion to make like a stronger opinion, that's kind of my goal. I mean, there's been times that I've countless videos, and discussion posts that have changed and swayed my opinion in a lot of different aspects in this game. So that's kind of the same thing I want to do here. But enough about that. Let's go back to the Atago and talking about it. So as you can see, the torpedo angles, the first launcher closer to the forward motion of the turrets, like the 1, 2, and 3 turrets, are way easier to utilize. It's about the front half of the ship can be angle-wise can be shot, and then when you get about like broadside, like flat on 90 degrees to the enemy vessel, that's when that second launcher comes into play. Again, the torpedo angles are very nice, very sweet, and so is that fire chance. But it's something that you're going to have to realize. And a big mistake that I see a lot of players make, and this is, again, another tip, and I've covered this a little bit in my IJN cruiser analysis guides with the various ships, is people are way too horny to launch and utilize their torpedo tubes. Just take a deep breath. Torpedo tubes will come. You will know when to launch them, but don't sacrifice your ship's HP to utilize your torpedo tubes. It just doesn't make sense, right? Pick your spots. Pick your spots. And I'm telling you, the torpedoes will come. The torpedoes I utilize and why I spec into torps. And this is something I want to talk about because I didn't get to talk about this really much in port. Like, Waffle, why do you spec in your torpedoes? The reason I spec in a torps is because you don't have DPM on the Atago. You don't. 16-second reload is incredibly long. So what I want to do is I want to have a filler within the gap or the lull of my artillery that I could potentially land big, hard-hitting damage, alpha strikes on oncoming vessels. Because the only real pushing like countermeasures you have, when we're not including torpedoes, is your HE's ability to set fires and slowly burn and whittle down the target. And I'm mainly going and addressing battleships, but let's say if we're getting up to it against heavier, hard-hitting cruisers like the Petropavlovsk or whatnot, it's going to be incredibly hard to deal with them reliably, as they're going to have faster DPM than you, most likely, and just a shit ton of HP. So that's why I spec into torpedoes, because it makes the most amount of sense for me. Now, some people are going to say, well, why don't you spec into the other artillery focus, making your reload faster? Valid point. My counter to that is the Atago with a full stealth build is 9.3 kilometers. If I want to spec more into artillery, then I would probably not spec full concealment build, because then I'd be more reliably proccing my skills in order to gain a faster reload, like sort of like a lighthouse build, which is possible on this vessel. I don't know what it is if you don't spec any skills, right? It's going to be like 11.2. I said 11.5. What you get is not bad. You know, Hindenburg crying in a corner at 12.6, for example. So you could do that, but to me too, that doesn't seem like high enough concealment to really get that. So you have to additionally take another skill, which would be the heavy HE and sap skill, which will help you again, and that'll bump your concealment up even more to like what, the high 12s, I think, if I'm not mistaken. I don't really know. So there's different builds you could play around with if you want to try that. For me, the way the Atago plays, even with the 16 seconds, you could probably get that down to what? With all skills, adrenaline rush, and all that stuff set aside, like what, 14, maybe the same as the Mogami. It just doesn't make sense to play the Atago at that point, other than credit income and just training up specific commanders. I think the build that I presented with you is just going to be a little bit more favorable in more situations. Now, obviously, I understand people will always tell you torpedoes are such a shit armament. As you see, that torpedo spread by one quad launcher has a massive gap in between the two torps. Great. And they're not wrong. I agree. Torpedoes, you really can't rely too much on your torpedoes. They're just there, and if they happen to land on something or hit something, they happen to do it. But with the Atago, to me, I think it is a necessary evil, and I actually do build for torpedoes just because I find more success. In all the games I played with her to produce this video for you guys, I found more success speccing into my torpedoes with using the pack-a-punch skill, for example, than taking the tier 4 skill that escapes my mind, that has you gain a quicker reload while in your base detection value, right? So that's my opinion. And I know it was a lengthy discussion about it. Again, it works for me. So I want to share that with you guys and present that build to you, so that hopefully if you try it, I hope to God it works for you, right? So as you can see, the battle on the top, it's a very close game. We're neck and neck here. Again, the Atago for me, when I need the Atago to shine most, is like examples like this. All I'm looking at for is a fire. He uses damage control. I need a permanent fire, and it gives it to me. You're gonna find in these ship, and again, the Mogami's the same way. A lot of these, I think, majority of these IJN heavy cruisers are this way. When you need a fire, you get a fire. That's just how these ships are, and how they work. With their high fire chance, with their hard-hitting HE, it's just really nice. Of course, the Royal Navy heavy cruisers take that to the next level, but still, these ships are very capable on the high seas. So, and the Atago being no exception. It is a great ship. I mean, it is a really good ship, fun ship to play. I do recommend purchasing her. 44 is really not that bad. I believe, was it back in the day? They might have hiked up the price a little bit. Was she $39.99? I always thought back in the day she was like one of the only tier 8 cruisers that was just under $40. But again, I could be wrong. I mean, it's been a while since I purchased this ship. I think this was the one of the ships I did actually purchase back in the day. So that's why it does have my full endorsement in regards to picking her up, just because she's tested and true. She is fun. She's reliable. Though it will get frustrating when you ever get in knife fights with DDs or with ships that just have way quicker reload than you, which is going to be the vast majority of ships. And you get in close, tight, and personal. You're going to get outclassed. It's just how it is. I've seen so many ships just absolutely nuke this thing. Like, for example, the Chapayev, done. Gone. The Baltimore, the Cleveland, I mean, it just really does nuke on this thing if you're not playing at longer ranges. And longer ranges for the Atago is 12 kilometers to its max range is where I'd say would you want to play. Another thing that does hurt the ship is the lack of spotter plane. I do wish to God they would add a spotter plane on this thing, just like I wish they added to the Mogami and Mayoko and a lot of those like mid-tier IJN heavy cruisers. I think the ship would benefit heavily from that, making it even more competitive, which would be nice. I think it'd be a nice breath of fresh air for this line, and especially for the Atago as well. But I've hit that that nail on the head so many times talking about it. with the whole analysis of the IJN cruiser line when I went through that, which I highly recommend you guys checking out if you haven't. I think I do a good job of showcasing some tips and tricks and how to get the most out of those ships, and showing that they are still very much worth it. And good ships, just you have to play them right. You have to know the ship. You have to understand cruiser gameplay, but especially understand what makes them strong. Utilizing the tools in your toolkit, that sort of thing. So 4v4 here. I'm sandwiched between two battleships. The biggest threat being the Colorado, because the Colorado to me isn't playing like a bot. I don't know what the Bismarck is doing, guys. Just understand that if you're going against a competent, sane Bismarck, it would not be this easy to deal with him. He's not even invested in secondaries. I don't know if he's a newer player. I don't know if he's a bot. I don't know what he is. But reversing broadside, no secondaries going at me, shooting every now and then just doesn't make too much sense. So I think the priority target here was most certainly the Colorado, which I will burn down here with the fire. So, oh, I didn't even get him. Some other asshole got him. Right on. Team game. So the Bismarck now is just gonna still reverse. So I'm just gonna launch one torpedo rack at the white indicator because I just don't think he's gonna change and alter course, and I'm gonna launch the other one. Anticipating if he starts going forward when he sees those torps, basically. And just kite away. You know, 380mm guns, yes, it could theoretically overmatch my 25mm ass and stern, but at the same time, it doesn't, like, I'm not really too worried about it because I'm so angled. I'm trying to bait him to shooting my my belt armor, which he does. And again, I'm sleek. I am a narrower target. It's harder to land, you know, good salvos on me reliably time and time again. So do go ahead and land a torpedo. Sadly, only one, but I'm going to go ahead and finish off the job here, loading the AP. I want to showcase the armor piercing, show you that it's prominent, it's potent. We did this in the IJN line when I did the analysis line. Definitely respect these guns, guys. They are 203mm guns. These are heavy cruiser guns. So, and we were able to take them down, which is nice. So, going in, it is 3v2. Little bit of an interesting play here. I mean, I think all the Colorado and my submarine had to do was not die, but they really wanted us to potentially throw the game, which was very interesting. Colorado sailing broadside to I think it's a Veneto coming in, and a Baltimore. I mean, brainless, right, so to speak. And then the submarine, all they had to do was keep going out wide instead of going towards the island. I think a submarine's biggest weakness is when it tries to finagle itself around islands, getting itself in tight, because then you can accurately predict, knowing the direction that the sub is going, more often than not, can accurately predict the direction the sub is going and pinpoint your drops perfectly, so to speak, right? But yeah, so again, I didn't want to fire here, and I'll explain to you why I didn't want to fire here. Obviously, the Veneno's guns are facing this direction. He knows he's spotted, so the only reason he knows he's spotted is obviously he has the detector indicator, but he knows that it has to be from this side. I wanted to launch my torpedoes, and then when the torpedoes about halfway traveled to the target, I wanted to shoot not only to reset the cap, but also to hopefully entice him to turn out this way. Obviously, he does the opposite, which again, probably I would have done too. You're going to utilize that island to your advantage. We do reset the cap. We get a nice fire set on him, and we're going to go ahead and dodge his sap salvo, which again is just point and click because that's the nature of sap nowadays in this game. And we, you know, securely and safely dodge that salvo. So we go ahead and hit him some more, resetting, getting more defended ribbons, which is awesome. And we're going to turn back in to engage. Now I have to use and tread carefully here, because I do know that the Baltimore could potentially be coming up to this near island, and I don't want to get caught in a nose-on, nose-in conflict with the Baltimore, as he has a faster reload. He does have radar, so he can spot me from 500 meters above my detection, and my reload is just not capable of dealing with that. So there's our Colorado getting almost eliminated from this game. Again, very questionable decision. I just don't understand why some people do what they do. Again, they're probably still playing shooty boats rather than like a thinking man's game with strategy. Some people don't have that. I get it. Whatever. You play the game how you want to play it. Just hopefully they, you know, you don't die. That was kind of my initial thought process. But after what just was displayed by him, I'm thinking he's going to be going down. So going ahead and launching torpedoes. And I'm actually loading AP, anticipating that maybe the Baltimore is doing exactly what he's doing here. Sadly, when he gets spotted, he does slightly angle out, which is going to affect my armor piercing, and I only get, I think, pens and overpens, and I get some shatters because he angled effectively on his armor. Notice how after I fire, I never turn in. I always turn out. A good habit to get in, not only with the Atago, but IJN cruisers in general, is when you fire, you want to turn out, especially when you're in the pre-kited position. You're just going to be able to utilize your armor more. And we all know in this game that ships that are kiting away have a distinct artillery advantage over ships that are pushing in. The angle that you have to shoot, like your gun angles or whatnot, are usually better. You can utilize your armor better. It's just overall win-win situation for when you're kiting away. So definitely start getting in the habit for that. But we're going to go ahead. Our Colorado goes down. Shocker. And we're just going to continue to keep shooting at range. See if we can whittle down this Baltimore. Because my initial play here was if I can kill the Baltimore, I can still run away. Maybe go cap. The other cap that's red, or is that decap? I'm not really 100% sure what that is because I can't really see it on my screen. So, but anyways, he keeps falling on and off. He decides to open up, so I just keep trading with him. Which again, I don't mind taking this trade at this distance. I'm respecting his armor piercing, and most likely just going to be getting superstructure hits anyways. So, but as the video is winding down, as the gameplay is winding down, I do want to talk about like some tips and tricks about her. Just go over some of the things that we can, talk about. One, the ship is not a DPM cruiser. The ship does have rather lackluster DPM, and you're gonna have to just play around that 16-second reload, and that's why I recommended speccing or building into the torpedoes as well, because you can min-max with those and do some good damage, which is thus increasing your, I guess, anti-pushing capabilities, so to speak. So that's good. 2, know when to shoot, know when not to shoot. The ship is very, very stealthy with a full stealth build of 9.5 kilometers. Utilize that, guys. Utilize that, utilize it, utilize that. Obviously, that's nullified with a CV game, but still, in a non-CV game, utilize that. Pick your targets right. 3, HE. But don't forget about the AP. The HE is going to be your bread and butter. 80% at 90% of the time, you're going to be shooting HE and doing great, great, great damage. If you have broadside targets, definitely switch that armor piercing. It is definitely capable of nuking the target, right? And the last tip and trick I have with the Atago is, and this one might be the most, what do you call it? Not controversial. One of the bigger, most important ones that I have with you guys with the Atago is positioning. And this kind of ties in with your standard cruiser knowledge and your standard, I guess, just IGN heavy cruiser knowledge. Read the minimap, know where ships are, anticipate where ships are, and position your ship accordingly. The ship has the ability to go from point A to point B relatively undetected, and it can pick its spots perfectly when fighting enemy vessels. Utilize that to the fullest, and you should get extremely good results out of your Atago. The armor is phenomenal, and she does pick up that heal, which, look, I still have 2 heals in my back pocket because I just have no need for them yet, right? The ship's survivability is great. It's nice to have a survivable IGN heavy cruiser, and this ship delivers that in multiple different areas. Your credit income is going to be awesome. Just overall, it is a premium that I can fully endorse for you guys. I do love this ship, and I find my time, my going back time and time again to play her, especially when I'm at tier 8. And she is competitive too. Maybe not as competitive as she once was, but she certainly is a capable ship, and I do full-heartedly and wholeheartedly recommend her to you guys out there. So anyways, I hope you all enjoyed the video. Please like, comment, subscribe, whatever you guys want to do. It's awesome. It helps the channel out. Though, again, I'm not in it for the money. I'm just here to help a brother out, right? So anyways, guys, I will catch you all in the next video. And until then, guys, right? Alrighty. Peace out.